Merry me, Annie here. This is the first of two videos I'm going to do on pagan perspective topics from last week. Last week was the subs week, and as usual they did a great job. And these topics were so interesting that I wanted to put my 2 cents in. I found them both very interesting. So I'm going to do a video on each one. The first one came from Hades 1347. I was wondering if you find that spells work better if you speak to your chosen god and goddess in the language of the culture they came from. This is a very interesting question, don't you think? I really enjoyed thinking about it. First thing I would have to say is, as a disclaimer, I don't speak to gods and goddesses when I do spell work. I'm an elemental witch, so I work with the elements and with my guardians of the elements, and that's how I do my spell work. I do reach out to the gods and the goddesses for inspiration and wisdom. I reach out to them for advice. There are other ways in which I do reach out to them and partner with them, and they're very much a part of the work that I do. But they're really not involved in my spell work. So that was an interesting thing for me to think about, how we each have our different ways of what we call out to and what we work with when we do spell work. But we still have the conversation around talking to the gods and the goddesses that we're working with in any way, spell work or any other way. And I say there is power in using their language, no doubt, but, and I have a lot of buts that came to my mind over this one, we are not of their time and their culture. Even if we do know the language of their culture, we're not of that time and that culture. It seems to me that if we are speaking to them in the language of their time, we are making a statement that we know them in that way. I doubt we do. I doubt we do. I believe we are relating to the gods and the goddesses that we work with from a contemporary viewpoint. We could study them and know an awful lot about them, don't get me wrong, but we are not of their time. There's a whole environment and culture and experience around them and who they were to the people who worshiped them that we can imagine, but not truly know. It seems to me that if we are speaking to them in their language of time and place, that we are relating to them as they were at that time. It just seems to me that speaking to them in their own language, connecting us to who they were historically, there's a lot of responsibility then that we know exactly what we're talking to. We must know an awful lot about them. And in fact, some of the things we need to know about them, I don't know that we can know about them. Now, if they are gods and goddesses of your own culture, and you quite naturally can speak a language that connects you to them, that's a little bit different because you're tying into your heritage, what came before in your line using that language. But if it's a language that you need to learn, or you need to read from a page and hope you're doing okay with it, I'm not so sure what we accomplish by that. I wonder how meaningful those words would be, whether they would be something we were saying by rote, struggling with, not feeling natural with. I do believe that a phrase or a word that we know is important to them, maybe from prayers we've read about that were used historically for them, can be used as a mantra and be very powerful in relating to them. I'm just not so sure that an entire vocabulary, unless we are very much at ease with it, is effective. Because the question was, is it more effective? It seems more of a stumbling block to me. It seems to me if we're using a language that's not our own to communicate with gods and goddesses, that we are magnifying, because it's not natural to us and isn't coming easily to us, that we're magnifying what we don't know about them rather than what we do. It seems to me that the conversation we have in our given language, the one we're most comfortable with, or one of the ones we're most comfortable with, is a language of the heart. Speaking from what we know of them, actually speaking to them from our contemporary viewpoint. It can include a lot of historical knowledge, a lot of understanding of their culture and their time, facts and figures about who they were, added to that our own emotional attachment to them, very powerful. The speaking from a contemporary viewpoint to these chosen deities. But when we speak, I believe, in a natural, comfortable language of ours, it ends up being a communication, I believe, without words. It comes from a place of silence. We speak the words because we are manifesting our thoughts and making an offering of them. But what they are connected to, if we truly know them, is what's within us. What's coming from within us to them. It's a place of non-words for all the fact that it is so important that we verbalize and speak to them. I just think that we come from a contemporary place of knowing when we speak to them in whatever way is most comfortable to us and acknowledge what we know of them from our current perspective in this time and this place. I know there will be exceptions. There will be some who are so studied and know so much and perhaps are so familiar with the culture and the time and the place at which a god or a goddess was worshipped that by speaking the language, they actually put themselves in that place in that time. But I think for the majority of us, we are viewing these gods and goddesses from a very contemporary point of view. And in the here and now, we are whomever we naturally are, with our very unique perspective on them, which will have a lot in common with who they were historically. But mostly, it is who they are to us in this modern contemporary time. And I believe in the power of speaking to them in our own language. I don't believe, even in our own language, of speaking by rote to them, of reading something off, or chanting something, or using language as an empty communication. I believe that we speak to them in a form that we know they will appreciate because we've come to know them well, and we know what they want, what they react to, from the heart, from here. I do not believe, no matter the language we are speaking, if it's just something we are saying by rote, that there is any communication there. I do believe the communication, we need to bring it from envisioning it and knowing it and having it be verbalized as the offering we make, the communication we make. But I believe it's this that is the place at which they listen to us. So that is a very interesting topic to think. If one is fluent and at ease in the language that was used in the history of a certain god or goddess, there's a comfortable easing into that, which I would think would be respectful. I don't believe we accomplish much, though, by being stiff and formal and struggling with a communication in a language which is not natural to us, for two reasons. The first thing is we are addressing the god or the goddess as we know them in a contemporary sense, and this is where we're actually speaking to them from. I would not see power in speaking their historical language unless it was something you were that comfortable with, and unless you knew very, very powerfully what they were in that time and in that place. I wish you mirth and reverence. Mary Part.